Even after 8 years of marriage to William, I was still a ghost in his family home, forbidden from sitting at the dining table. It was all because of a promise he had made to his deceased fiancée, Victoria. He had sworn that the seat of the matriarch of the family would eternally belong to her. During his father's 60th birthday gala at the country club, a hurried waiter bumped into me. I stumbled, losing my balance, and landed right in the empty chair that had been meticulously reserved for Victoria. William's face instantly darkened. He marched over, grabbed my arm with bruising force, and yanked me out of the seat. "How can you be so calculating?" he hissed, his voice low but sharp enough for the surrounding guests to hear. Deliberately sitting in Victoria's chair in front of everyone. "Are you really that desperate to replace her? Why are you trying to compete with a dead woman?" his mother added, her eyes cold with disdain. "Check your jealousy, Isabelle. It's pathetic." His father joined in, calling me shameless and telling me to get out of the venue immediately. I stood there, blinking back tears, trying to ignore the sharp, throbbing pain in my sprained ankle. I opened my mouth to explain, but my 8-year-old son, Toby, cut me off, his little face twisted in embarrassment. "You're so embarrassing, Mom," Toby spat, looking at me with pure disgust. "If Victoria were here, she would never stoop to your level. I wish she were my real mother." That night, William locked me in the windowless basement study. Through the heavy wooden door, I could hear him introducing Victoria's memory to the guests as his one true wife. Later, I heard Toby telling a family friend that I was nothing more than his nanny. Something inside me went cold. The final ember of my warmth died out. When William finally opened the door the next morning, he looked down at me, his expression a mixture of irritation and cold charity. "You went too far last night," he said. "Go to Victoria's grave. Stay there and reflect on what you did." He thrust a bouquet into my arms. It was yellow chrysanthemums, Victoria's favorite, but the one flower that triggered my severe pollen allergy. The last time I was near them, I had gone into anaphylactic shock. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply looked at him, my voice flat and empty. "William, let's get a divorce." 1. William froze. Then, a mocking laugh escaped his lips. "All this because I made you spend one night in the study? You really are made of glass, aren't you?" He stepped closer, his shadow looming over me. "Victoria and I were betrothed since childhood. She is the only daughter-in-law my parents will ever recognize. Even if you carved your name onto that chair, you couldn't change that. I'm telling you this for your own good, Isabelle. You need to know your place." I had heard variations of this speech 1,000 times over the last 8 years. In the past, because of my love for him and my devotion to Toby, I had swallowed every insult. I told myself that the dead deserved respect, and so I let myself be pushed into the shadows. But my silence had only invited more cruelty. This time, I was done retreating. I threw the bouquet of chrysanthemums onto the floor. The yellow petals scattered across the cold hardwood. I looked up and met his eyes. "If she was so irreplaceable, why did you marry me? Why did you have a child with me? Why didn't you just remain celibate for the rest of your life to honor her?" I asked, my voice rising. "The truth is your grand, tragic love is a sham. It's completely worthless." The air in the room seemed to solidify. William's face turned an ugly, dangerous shade of red. "Isabelle, you are being utterly irrational." He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "I know how much you've done for this family over the years. I see it. If you just go to Victoria's grave, kneel, and apologize, I will finally arrange a proper wedding. We can make our marriage public." There it was again. That patronizing, charitable tone. When we first spoke of marriage, I knew Victoria was an insurmountable mountain in his parents' minds. They refused to accept any other woman. So William and I agreed to a private commitment ceremony, keeping our union a secret until his parents came around. For 8 years, I woke up before dawn to prepare 3 meals a day. I cleaned, I ironed, I managed the household like an unpaid servant. All to prove that I was worthy. But every time I brought up a legal marriage or a public wedding, William had an excuse ready. "I'm too busy with the firm right now. Let's talk about it later." My parents still grieve for Victoria. "You've only been here a few years. You can't expect them to change overnight. Just wait." "Why are you so materialistic? Are you that desperate to show everyone you married into wealth?" So I waited. I waited until the hope in my chest dried up and turned to dust. And now, when I no longer cared, he was offering it to me like a treat thrown to a dog. "I don't want a wedding," I said, my throat tight, the first waves of the allergy beginning to make my eyes itch. "Just give me the divorce. I'll have the paperwork ready." Without waiting for his response, I brushed past him and walked out. But as I hurried down the hallway, the itching in my eyes grew unbearable. Red, angry hives began to bloom across my arms, itching fiercely. The pollen from the chrysanthemums had already done its work. I rushed into the living room and grabbed the medical kit from the shelf, desperately searching for my antihistamines. Just as I managed to pop the blister pack, a violent force shoved me from behind. I crashed onto the floor, my temple striking the sharp edge of the coffee table. A blinding pain shot through my skull. I looked up, clutching my bleeding forehead, and saw Toby standing over me. His small face was twisted in disgust. "Are you blind?" Toby yelled, pointing at the table. "You put that stupid medical kit right on top of Victoria's handkerchief. You're so clumsy and malicious. How did someone like you give birth to me? It's humiliating." Dizzy and shivering, I looked down. Beneath the plastic box was a small yellow silk handkerchief. It was Victoria's. William had given it to Toby as a keepsake, and Toby treated it like holy relic, forbidding anyone, especially me, from touching it. My eyes were swelling shut, and my vision was tunneling. I could barely see the pills in my hand, let alone a tiny handkerchief on a cluttered table. But Toby didn't care about my pain. He carefully picked up the handkerchief, blew the non-existent dust off it, and then snatched the packet of allergy pills from my trembling fingers. "Victoria is gone, and you still try to ruin everything she left behind," the boy said coldly. "You need to learn a lesson." With a vicious flick of his wrist, he threw my medication out the open window, deep into the thick, thorny hydrangea bushes below. "No," I gasped, curling into a ball on the floor, my fingers desperately clawing at my burning, itching skin. Toby didn't even look back as he strolled out of the room. 2. Watching his small, retreating back, a tear slipped down my cheek, hot against my swollen skin. Toby hadn't always hated me. When he was 2, he was a deeply insecure child. He cried whenever anyone else tried to hold him. Once, when William tried to pick him up, Toby had scratched his father's face until it bled. Back then, I was his entire world. He wouldn't let anyone hurt me. On our 5th anniversary, William stood me up to go to an auction to buy a rare collection of sketches Victoria had loved. Toby had gone on a hunger strike for an entire week, demanding his father apologize to me. But William's parents blamed me for corrupting the boy. They forcibly took Toby away to their estate and barred me from seeing him. I knelt outside their iron gates for 3 days and 3 nights in the rain. Finally, they relented, allowing me to visit Toby once a month, for no more than 10 minutes at a time. Over those isolated years, Toby's love for me faded, replaced by a carefully manufactured devotion to a woman he had never met. The anaphylactic reaction was peaking. My throat felt as though it were closing, and my consciousness began to slip away. Through the haze, a muffled, frantic voice echoed in my ears. "Isabelle." Before darkness took me, I saw a flash of sheer terror on William's face. When I opened my eyes, the stark white ceiling of a hospital room came into focus. The room was empty, but the door was slightly ajar. From the hallway, familiar voices drifted in, their words sharp and clear. "If she wants a divorce, let her leave," my mother-in-law said, her voice dripping with contempt. "It's not like your marriage certificate is real anyway. She can't touch a single penny of our estate." My heart stopped. "She's just throwing a tantrum to force your hand for a wedding," she continued. "Delusional girl. A charity case from the slums thinks she deserves to carry our family name." William's father chimed in, patting his son on the shoulder. "I've seen her type 1,000 times. She's social climber. We tested her for 8 years, and she still couldn't control her greed. You should have thrown her out long ago." William was silent for a long moment. "I know," he said quietly. "You don't need to worry about this. I'll handle her." It felt as though a bolt of lightning had struck my chest. The blood in my veins turned to ice. For 8 years, I had worked myself to the bone for this family. I had believed that even if his parents despised me, William's love for me was real. But it was all a lie. Our marriage wasn't even legal. He had exploited my body, my heart, and my labor for nearly a decade, and I had absolutely nothing to show for it. Rage, pure and hot, surged through me. I pulled the 4-line from my hand, swung my legs out of bed, and threw the door open. "How could you do this to me?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of fury and betrayal. The 3 of them jumped, their faces turning pale and awkward. William's eyes flickered with a brief flash of guilt before hardening into his usual mask of irritation. "Why are you out of bed? Were you eavesdropping? Is that how you behave now?" I let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "Are you angry because I finally know the truth? 10 years, William. We knew each other for 10 years. We lived together for 8. I never even asked you for a ring. How could you play with my life like this? What did I ever do to deserve this?" William frowned, his voice dropping into a cold, defensive tone. "You brought this on yourself. When we were supposed to get married, you made a scene. My parents were worried that if we registered the marriage immediately, you would become arrogant and tarnish our family's reputation. It was a precaution." His words dragged me back to my 21st birthday. William had promised me a beautiful birthday dinner. But when I arrived at the venue, the party had been transformed into a somber memorial service for Victoria. The balloons I had spent hours picking out were popped. The banner wishing me a happy birthday was shredded in the corner. My cake had been tossed into the trash. His parents had screamed at me. "You haven't even married into this family and you're already trying to assert dominance? Today is Victoria's death anniversary. How dare you celebrate your birthday on this day? Kneel and apologize to Victoria, or you will never enter our doors." I had never felt so humiliated. I broke up with William on the spot. But he pursued me relentlessly for 6 months, begging for forgiveness, promising he would protect me. Foolishly, I believed him. I agreed to a private ceremony, thinking he was standing by my side against his parents. Now I realized the chase hadn't been about love. It had been about control. It was a punishment. If you had just apologized to Victoria back then, none of this would have happened, William said, looking down his nose at me. You publicly embarrassed my parents. This was your consequence. But now that you know, we can put it behind us. Once you're discharged, we will go and register the marriage properly. Slap. My hand struck his cheek before he could finish the sentence. The sound echoed down the sterile hallway. You disgust me, I whispered. I will never sign a single piece of paper with you. We are finished. William's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. Are you serious? If you walk away, you will never get custody of Toby. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice devoid of emotion. A child who doesn't love me? You can keep him. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the exit. I took a cab back to the house to pack. Behind me, the sound of hurried footsteps followed. William had chased me all the way from the hospital. Ignoring him, I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. But as I reached the living room, I froze. A young woman was sitting gracefully on the sofa, sipping tea. When she saw me, she offered a sweet, practiced smile. Hello, she said softly. I'm Victoria, William's fiancée. 3. William pushed past me, his eyes wide, his entire body trembling as he stared at the woman on the couch. Victoria, is it really you? Victoria's eyes welled with tears. Before she could speak, Toby ran out from the kitchen, throwing his arms around her waist. Yes, Dad. Victoria isn't dead. She's back. Toby looked at me, his eyes flashing with triumph. She's even prettier than her pictures. No wonder you don't love Mom. I wouldn't either if I had Victoria. My hands clenched into fists, the nails biting into my palms. My heart felt as though it were being slowly torn to pieces. Victoria looked up at me, her gaze lingering on my faded clothes. And this is? William cleared his throat, his eyes darting away from mine. Just someone who helped take care of the house, to keep things running. He paused, casting a quick glance at me to gauge my reaction. When I remained silent, he let out a subtle sigh of relief. Victoria let out a soft gasp of feigned realization. Oh, I see. I honestly thought she was the housekeeper. The words felt like physical blows. Victoria's skin was flawless, her long dark hair falling like silk over her shoulders. She looked like a painting. I, on the other hand, was 3 years younger than her, but years of sleepless nights, endless chores, and emotional neglect had left my skin dull and my eyes hollow. Standing next to her, I looked like a servant. No wonder his family always said I couldn't compare to a single hair on her head. Victoria looked at me with a flicker of smug satisfaction before turning back to William, her expression melting into delicate sorrow. I'm so sorry, William. I didn't mean to disrupt your life, she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. I just wanted to see you. After the traffickers took me all those years ago, I managed to escape, but the trauma caused me to lose my memory. I lived in a remote mountain village, completely lost. As soon as my memories returned, I ran to find you. I didn't know you had moved on. William's face filled with a deep, consuming tenderness. He reached out, gently wiping her tears away. It doesn't matter, he murmured. As long as you're back, the place of the mistress of this house is yours. It always has been. Victoria blinked in surprise. But, what about her? William hesitated, but before he could speak, I stepped forward. We aren't married, I said, my voice steady. He is single. You don't need to worry about me. William looked at me, stunned by my coldness. I ignored him, walked upstairs, and began packing my suitcase. 30 minutes later, I dragged my bag down the stairs, only to find Victoria standing at the landing, blocking my path. The sweet, victimized look was gone, replaced by a cold, mocking sneer. You're smarter than I thought, knowing when you've lost, she whispered. But I still don't like the fact that you lived in my house for 8 years, sleeping in my bed. That belonged to me. I think you owe me some interest. Before I could react, she reached over to the hallway table, grabbed a heavy crystal vase, and threw it onto the hardwood floor. It shattered into 100 jagged pieces. Then she fell to her knees, clutching her head, screaming in terror. No. Please don't hurt me. I'm sorry, she wailed, shrinking into the corner. Please don't hit me. I'm scared. Within seconds, a hand grabbed my shoulder and shoved me violently against the wall. William rushed past me, throwing his arms around Victoria. Victoria. I'm here. You're safe. Victoria sobbed hysterically, burying her face in his chest. William, she hates me. She thinks I'm stealing you away. She knew about my trauma. She knew the sound of breaking glass triggers my memories of the traffickers. She threw the vase on purpose to torture me. I straightened up, rubbing my bruised shoulder. I didn't touch it. Check the security cameras if you don't believe me. Crack. Before I could finish, William's hand struck my face, sending me sprawling onto the floor. He lunged forward, his hands wrapping around my neck, his eyes wild with rage. You monstrous woman. Victoria barely survived that hell. And you dare to torment her? Do you think I won't kill you? Toby ran over, kicking my leg with all his might. Bad woman. You don't deserve to be my mother. Go away and die. Looking at the two of them, the father and the son I had loved with every fiber of my being, I felt the last shred of my pain dissolve into numbness. In 8 years, they had never once defended me like this. I used to tell myself they were just emotionally detached, that it was their nature. But they weren't cold. They were capable of fierce, protective love. They just didn't love me. From the corner of the room, Victoria watched me, a tiny, triumphant smile playing on her lips. I took a deep, steady breath, looking directly into William's furious eyes. Go ahead then. Kill me, I said, my voice eerily calm. But if you do, you'll never find out who Victoria really is. The pressure on my trachea did not increase. William's thumbs, which had been pressing into the soft tissue of my throat with enough force to cut off my breath, froze. His chest was heaving, his face still. A dark, congested red of pure, irrational fury, but my words had struck a nerve. Behind him, Victoria's pathetic wailing cut short for a fraction of a second. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible break in her rhythm, but after 8 years of observing every micro-expression of the people in this house just to survive, I didn't miss it. What did you say? William hissed, his voice dropping into a low, dangerous register. What lie are you trying to spin now, Isabelle? To save yourself after trying to terrorize her? I didn't answer right away. I let my hands drop to my sides, my body perfectly limp against the floorboards. I didn't struggle. I didn't try to pull his hands away. My complete lack of resistance seemed to unnerve him more than any scream would have. Look at her hands, William, I whispered, my voice hoarse from the strain on my throat. She spent 10 years in a remote mountain village, taken by traffickers. She allegedly worked in the fields, survived on scraps, and escaped through the thick woods. But look at her cuticles. Look at the skin on her palms. William's eyes instinctively flicked toward Victoria, who was still kneeling on the floor, clutching his coat. She quickly tucked her hands under her sleeves. But she was too late. There isn't a single callus on her fingers, I said, a cold, mocking smile touching my lips. Her skin is softer than mine. And that scar on her left shoulder, the one she claimed she got from a rusty farm tool? It's a clean, surgical incision. It's the entry point for a premium silicone chest implant. I know because I approved the medical insurance invoices for your firm's executive partners for 8 years. I know what cosmetic surgery scars look like. Isabelle, shut up. Toby screamed, lunging forward and kicking my shin again. You're lying. You're just jealous because Dad loves her. You're a monster. Toby, go to your room, William ordered, his voice suddenly quiet. But Dad. I said, go to your room. William barked, not looking at his son. Toby flinched, his face turning pale at his father's sudden severity. He glared at me one last time, his small eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and deep, childish hatred, before running up the stairs. William slowly released his grip on my neck. He stood up, his tall frame casting a long shadow over me as I lay on the cold hardwood floor. He looked down at Victoria, who was looking up at him with wide, watery eyes that were suddenly filled with a very real, very sharp panic. William, you don't believe her, do you? Victoria whispered, her voice trembling. She's trying to ruin us. She knows I have memory loss. She's trying to confuse me. I don't believe her, William said, but his voice lacked its previous, ironclad certainty. He reached down to help her up, his touch polite but no longer carrying that fierce, consuming tenderness. I crawled to my feet, my bruised shoulder throbbing, my throat burning with every breath. I didn't look at them. I didn't wait for William to apologize, and I didn't wait for Victoria to drop her mask. I walked to the hallway table, picked up my suitcase, which had remained untouched near the shattered crystal, and walked out the front door. Behind me, the heavy wooden door of the villa clicked shut. As I walked down the gravel driveway, the cool autumn air hit my face, soothing the burning hives on my skin. I didn't look back at the grand, imposing house that had been my prison for 8 years. I didn't look back at the family that had treated me like an unpaid servant. I took a deep, clean breath, the first one in nearly a decade, and felt the final embers of my warmth turn to cold, hard stone. The hotel room I rented near the city center was small, clean, and completely silent. I spent the first 24 hours in bed, letting the antihistamines do their work. The swelling in my eyes went down, and the angry red hives on my arms slowly faded into faint pink marks. I ordered hot broth from room service, ate it in silence, and watched the rain run down the double-pane window. On the second morning, I sat at the small desk with my laptop. William's family had always called me a charity case from the slums. They had assumed that because I came from a modest background, I was a helpless parasite who had clung to William's wealth. But they had forgotten one crucial detail. Before I met William, I was a senior financial auditor for one of the largest accounting firms in the state. I was the one who had spent the last 8 years quietly reorganizing the chaotic, debt-ridden back end of the Thorne family trust. I was the one who had restructured their commercial loans, managed their real estate tax shelters, and set up the private corporate accounts that kept their logistics firm from collapsing under his father's reckless spending. They thought I was just a housewife who cleaned their floors and ironed their shirts. I opened my secure digital vault and began entering the codes. First, I withdrew my private equity shares from the Thorne Holding Company, shares that had been registered in my maiden name as part of our initial partnership agreement 10 years ago. It was 40% of the firm's liquid capital. Second, I revoked my personal signature from the guarantor forms for their primary line of credit at the commercial bank. For 8 years, the bank had only allowed William to borrow millions because my clean, high-tier credit rating and professional audit reports stood as the secondary collateral. Finally, I closed the private household management account, the one I used to pay the utility bills, the property taxes, the gardening service, and the private security detail for the villa. My phone rang within 10 minutes of the transaction's clearing. It was William. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A second later, a text message popped up. Isabelle, what are you doing? The bank just called. They've frozen our corporate credit line. And the household utility service sent an automated notification that the electricity at the villa is scheduled for termination. Call me back immediately. I didn't reply. I deleted the message, blocked his number, and closed my laptop. I had spent 8 years keeping their lives warm, clean, and secure. I had made sure their bills were paid on time, their clothes were ironed, and their tea was hot. And in return, they had locked me in a basement, made me breathe poison, and called me a servant. Now they could find out what it actually cost to keep a house running. Back at the Thorne Villa, the autumn cold was starting to seep through the floorboards. The gardening crew had not shown up that morning. The thick, thorny hydrangea bushes where Toby had thrown my medication were left overgrown, their dead brown leaves cluttering the stone path. The private security guards at the iron gates had left at noon, their contracts canceled due to non-payment of their monthly retainer. Inside, the grand living room was quiet, save for the sound of Victoria's sharp, irritated voice echoing from the kitchen. "William, why isn't the heating working?" she demanded, walking into the room, wearing a silk robe that had belonged to me. "It's freezing in here. In the refrigerator, the light is off. All the organic milk I ordered has gone sour." William was sitting at the oak desk, surrounded by a mountain of paper files. He had been there for 6 hours, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot as he tried to navigate the complex financial software Isabelle had always handled. "The bank withdrew our credit line, Victoria," William said, his voice flat and exhausted. Isabelle was the primary guarantor. When she revoked her signature, the bank flagged our accounts for review. "Then just sign the papers yourself," Victoria snapped, her sweet, delicate demeanor completely gone. "You're the head of the firm. Why do you need her name on anything?" "Because my credit rating is too low," William said, his voice dropping into a dull, humiliated whisper. "My father's debts, the auction for those sketches you wanted last year. We used our personal credit to clear them. Without Isabelle's audited reports, the bank won't let us borrow a single dollar." Toby walked into the room, holding his iPad. "Dad, the Wi-Fi isn't working. It says the account has been suspended." "Go play in your room, Toby," William said, not looking at him. "But Dad, it's cold in my room," Toby complained, his lip trembling. "And the housekeeper didn't make lunch today. She said she hasn't been paid her weekly wage. I said go to your room," William roared, his hand slamming against the desk. Toby flinched, his small face twisting in shock. He looked at Victoria, expecting her to pull him into her arms and comfort him the way his mother used to do whenever his father got angry. But Victoria didn't look at him. She was busy checking her reflection in the gilded mirror, her brow furrowed in irritation. "Don't look at me, kid," she muttered. "Go ask your nanny to make you a sandwich." She's not my nanny," Toby whispered, his eyes wide. "She's my mother." "Well, your mother is gone," Victoria said, her voice sharp and dry. "And she left us in this freezing house with no electricity. No wonder your grandparents hated her." Toby stood in the center of the cold room, his iPad heavy in his hands. For the first time in his life, he realized that the perfect, beautiful mother he had dreamed of wasn't going to make him hot soup. She wasn't going to sit by his bed when he had a fever, and she wasn't going to kneel in the rain to protect him. She was just a stranger who didn't want him there. By Monday morning, I had already rented a modern, bright office space in the city's financial district. I was sitting at my new desk, sipping a cup of black coffee, when my phone buzzed with an email from my private investigator, Mr. Vance. Ms. Lynn, we have completed the background check on the woman claiming to be Victoria Vance. Her real name is Vivian Cole. She is a former high-end escort from the southern districts who underwent extensive facial reconstruction surgery 3 years ago in Switzerland. The surgery was funded by a shell company registered to Marcus Vance, William's primary business rival. I scrolled down looking at the attached photographs. There were pictures of Vivian Cole before her surgery, her face entirely different, her lifestyle lavish. There were also bank transfer records showing a monthly retainer of $50,000 paid to her by Marcus Vance's logistics firm. The plan was simple, brutal, and incredibly effective. Marcus knew that William's firm was held together solely by the financial back-end managed by me. He knew that if he could introduce a miraculous survivor from William's past, William's guilt and obsession would drive him to throw me out. Once I was gone, the Thorne family firm would collapse under its own weight, allowing Marcus to buy their assets for pennies on the dollar. And William had walked right into the trap. I forwarded the entire file to the district attorney's office, along with a formal complaint for corporate espionage, fraud, and identity theft. Then, I forwarded a copy to William's personal email. Within 5 minutes, my office intercom buzzed. Ms. Lynn, there is a man downstairs who insists on seeing you, the receptionist said, her voice nervous. He says his name is William Thorne. He's making a scene in the lobby. Send him up, I said. When the elevator doors opened, William looked like a ghost. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie was missing, and his chin was covered in dark, unkempt stubble. He held his phone in his hand, the screen still displaying the files I had sent him. Isabelle. He whispered, his voice shaking. This isn't real. It can't be. Victoria. She remembered our childhood. She knew the name of our dog. She knew. She read Victoria's diary, William. I said, not standing up from my desk. The one your mother kept in the family archives. Marcus Vance bribed your mother's personal maid to copy the files 2 years ago. The police have already secured the maid's confession. William's knees buckled. He had to reach out and grip the edge of my desk to keep from falling. My mother, he stammered. My mother helped her? Your mother wanted Victoria back so badly, she was willing to believe anything. I said, my voice deadpan. She hated me because I didn't have an old pedigree. She wanted a daughter-in-law she could show off at the country club, even if that daughter-in-law was a paid actress hired to bankrupt her son. Isabelle. William fell to his knees beside my desk, his hands reaching out to grab my hand, but I pulled my arm back, leaving his fingers clutching the cold air. I'm sorry. I was a fool. I was blinded by the guilt. I thought I was fixing the past. Please, come home. We can register the marriage today. I'll make the firm 40% yours. Just help me save the company. The company is already gone, William, I said, looking down at him. The bank is foreclosing on the villa on Friday. Your father's personal assets have been frozen by the bankruptcy court. And your mother? She's currently being questioned by the Federal Trade Commission for complicity in corporate espionage. But Toby, William sobbed, his head dropping onto his knees. Toby misses you. He hasn't eaten in 3 days. He keeps crying for his mom. He knows he was wrong, Isabelle. He's just an 8-year-old child. You can't abandon him. I looked at him, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt absolutely nothing. No anger. No sorrow. No lingering spark of the love that had once made me kneel outside their iron gates in the freezing rain. An 8-year-old child who threw my life-saving medication into the bushes because I touched a yellow handkerchief. I said, my voice eerily calm. He has your blood, William. He has your parents' upbringing. He is exactly who you raised him to be. Isabelle, please. Get out, William, I said, turning back to my computer screen. The security guards are on their way up. Don't make them drag you out. The rain in Rouville was cold, but it didn't hurt anymore. 2 weeks later, the foreclosure on the Thorne Villa was completed. The grand, imposing house was sealed with yellow police tape, the overgrown hydrangea bushes left to rot in the winter frost. I stood on the platform of the central station, carrying a single suitcase. My ticket was for a high-speed train to the coast, where my new firm had opened a regional office. Mom, a small, frantic voice cut through the noise of the crowded station. I turned around. Toby was running toward me, his expensive winter coat dirty, his shoes missing their laces. Behind him, William was struggling to keep up, his face pale and drawn. Toby threw himself against my legs, his small arms wrapping around my knees with a desperate, painful strength. Mom, please. Don't leave, he sobbed, his face buried in my gray wool coat. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the handkerchief. I'm sorry about the pills. I'll never do it again. Please come home. I looked down at him. I remembered when he was 2, his small, warm hand clutching my finger as he fell asleep. I remembered the weeks I had spent crying outside his grandparents' gates just to see him for 10 minutes. But those 10 minutes were gone. The boy who loved me had been slowly, systematically erased by the people behind him. I slowly reached down, peeled his hands off my coat, and stepped back. Be a good boy, Toby, I said, my voice quiet and neutral. Listen to your father. Isabelle, William cried, reaching out to me, his eyes wide with a desperate, pathetic panic. Please, just one more chance. We can start over. A new city, a new life. Our life finished 8 years ago, William, I said, looking into his eyes. You just took 8 years to notice. The train doors let out a soft, pneumatic hiss as they slid open. I stepped inside, found my seat near the window, and watched as the doors closed, separating me from the 2 figures on the platform. As the train slowly pulled away, the gray sky of Rouville began to break, a small, bright wedge of sunlight finally touching the wet tracks. I pulled my wool scarf tighter around my neck, opened my drafting notebook, and began to draw the clean, perfect lines of my new beginning.